Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever in the world you may be joining us from today. My name is Francesco Del Carpio, and I am the CFL York Operations Coordinator. I would like to officially open the fourth session of the Climate Change Emergencies and Cultural Heritage Speaker Series, which is being presented in partnership with Heritage Ottawa with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge and recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territory upon which our campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. The area is known as Tkaronto and has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. The territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. As this is an online event, our participants may be joining from various locations, so I strongly encourage you to learn about the traditional land upon which you are located. With this, I welcome our moderator, our speaker, and our participants from around the world. Welcome to our webinar. Without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our moderator, Dr. Henrik Schonefeld. Henrik Schonefeld is Professor of Sustainability and Architectural Heritage at the University of Kent School of Architecture and Planning. He specialized in environmental design with a master's in philosophy and PhD from the University of Cambridge. His main research interest is in historical principles of environmental design, both as field of scholar research and architectural practice. He is currently seconded to Parliament to lead a large research project on sustainable conservation at the Palace of Westminster, which is also the subject of his recent book, Disruptive Environmentalism, published by Routledge in 2021. Dr. Schonefeld, thank you so much for moderating today's session. The floor is yours.
I just want to say thank you for Kuro Shatarian for inviting me to chair here. It's a great pleasure for me to be able to introduce and chair Dr. Rosa Milito's presentation. Just to say a few notes about our speaker today, as you will have seen from the material that was sent around, that she's Secretary General of the ICOMOS International Scientific Committee on Energy and Sustainability. And she has actually got a PhD from the University of Sapienza in Rome. And her interest is actually at the intersection between heritage and sustainability. And the talk that she's going to be giving us, and we're going to hear a lot about it, is really trying to explore that from an international perspective and where we are with this issue. Because one thing that certainly in my own area as a professor in sustainability I know about is rather sometimes the difficulties of actually bringing those two worlds in dialogue with one another. Those people who sit in the world of heritage and those who are interested in sustainable development or sustainable design, they have so much to share, but they rarely come together in a very constructive, integrated way. And so this venture of actually integrating sustainability and heritage is a really important challenge, and it needs to be really addressed. And we should be all looking forward to hear from Rosa Milito's work about this challenge and what she can tell us about it. So no further ado, I would like to hand over to Rosa Milito to share her insights with us.
I start to share the screen and then let me know if you see the because I have two screens here, so I just have to manage to do it properly. So share screen. I share this screen. Okay. Share, and now I should start with the presentation. So are you able to see the first slide?
Yeah, the title page.
Okay.
Yep. That looks good.
Okay, perfect. So I'm based in Halifax in Nova Scotia, in Canada, of course, and so I acknowledge that we are on Mi'kmaq, the Mi'kmaqi, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Mi'kmaq, that's a little bit complicated, and Passamaquoddy people first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Maliseet title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. So we can start now to introduce my presentation. I will talk about the connections and intersection between climate action and cultural heritage. And I will provide a synopsis of international efforts to strengthen the connection. A lot has been done. A lot more needs to be done. So to come to your point and address the challenge and have an effective communication. We all know, probably all are in front of the threats that climate change poses on cultural heritage, from flooding to rising sea level to fire to extreme temperature. That's all is impacted not only our cultural heritage, but also our life, our natural and cultural heritage. And these, of course, is causing a loss of cultural heritage, loss of identity, of indigenous cultural traditions, settlements, lifestyle. And there are also, between the threats, I will say that there are also unintended consequences of climate action regulation. Most of the, okay, we can go after, we can go, okay, I can start here. However, for this conversation, for this presentation, I would like to point the attention on a shift in perspective. So how leveraging cultural heritage for climate emergency solutions. The Sustainable Development Goals are a call for action by all countries, poor, rich, and middle income, to promote sustainability and to protecting the planet. They recognize the ended poverty, that ending poverty must go hand in hand with strategies that build economic growth and address a range of social needs, including education, health, social protection, and job opportunities, while tackling climate change and environmental protection. Where this intersection can be so in all the development goals, there is a role that cultural heritage can play into addressing, into contributing to this, to the achievement of those goals. ICOMOS and ICOMOS has established in 2017 the ICOMOS Climate Change Heritage Working Group that just after the conference, the UN conference Habitat 3 in Quito. I was actually there during the first meetings, let's say, to start this group, starting this group. The group was already started before, but there are a number of other initiatives, let's say, initiative studies and reports by UNESCO, including one of the earliest studies, the Cultural Urban Future, published in 2016 and launched at Habitat 3, that represents a kind of initial milestone in introducing the concept of culture as a transversal dimension to achieve sustainable development through example and case studies implementing the historical urban landscape approach. Then there are other elements that we can consider, exploring ways to leverage cultural heritage in climate action, cross-connection between cultural heritage and SDG, and I already said that. adaptation and mitigation strategy built on traditional and local knowledge, and also using the power and the communication power of World Heritage Site in climate emergency and action. The climate, there are a number of, one of the first global, let's say, global network that was established in 2017, I think, in 18, was Climate Heritage Network. That's a voluntary mutual support network between government agency, university, business, etc. And it was mobilized in 2018 and launched in 2019. This network kind of works at reorienting climate policy, planning and action at all levels to account for dimension of culture, from arts to heritage. In 2017 and 22, it started with a number of working groups. I was part of working group 4, I think. I don't remember now, but and this working group worked on research projects on different themes. Themes included heritage in climate planning and buildings and infrastructure, communicating the role of culture, indigenous people, cultural heritage and way of living, etc. There are some publications of this research that are available on the Climate Heritage Network website. So this is just to give a brief outline of the perspective of my speech. Today's exploration is a swift journey through key realms at the intersection of climate change and cultural heritage. In our journey, we'll set the stage by acknowledging the challenges posed by climate change to our cultural heritage, but more importantly, I'll focus on the proactive approach of leveraging this heritage in our collective fight against climate change. Topics of the agenda will be understanding the connection, international initiatives, interconnection between SDGs and climate change, fostering global partnership, ICOMOS, the work that ICOMOS Scientific Committee on Energy Sustainability has done and is doing, integrating cultural heritage into climate action, and case studies, resources, some case study resources, and conclusion notes, how to move forward. Will not only recognize the challenge, but also underscore the proactive approach and to build a resilient and sustainable future. First of all, this project, this publication is available on the ICOMOS website, and it's the fruit of the work, the result of the work that the ICOMOS Climate Change Heritage Working Group did between 2017 and 2019. I was actually part of one of the session, worked with Peter Cox on the session on mitigation. However, so this publication, this work, sorry, the future of our past, basically is explores different ways and different of engaging in cultural heritage in climate action, but also there is the second part also highlights all the impacts and the causes of the impacts, and identify way forward to integrate mitigation and adaptation measures. So the work is divided in 5 sections. The first part, in which the first one is high ambition and promotes a fundamental shift in policy and professional practice to acknowledge the immense power of cultural heritage. Sorry, I have to get a little bit of water. In raising awareness, developing adaptation and mitigation strategies, and building social inclusion and cohesion in support to climate action. The second part, the second division is adaptation, talks about a significant, how cultural heritage has a significant potential to contribute to adaptation pathways for human system. Of course, looking at traditional and local approaches fundamentally. Sorry, here we are. I missed my notes. Through knowledge, this part is through knowledge and understanding, planning and implementation, the role of heritage in disaster risk reduction, adapting planning for heritage, coordination of heritage adaptation with, within wider national and international policies, highlights opportunities, constraints, and address barriers, and also highlights the barriers that exist to adaptive management of acknowledging sustainability in traditional ways of living and implement sustainability activities to conserve heritage. The session, the division instead of mitigation, discuss about, explore cultural heritage with its embedded intangible and tangible values and how it intersects both directly and indirectly with the Paris Agreement decarbonization imperative to mitigate greenhouse gas emission. It's kind of detailed. There's a lot of technical information as well in this session. So the message here is while there are win-win strategies showcasing social values for mitigation activities associated with cultural heritage based mitigation measures, in many cases, real or perceived tensions between greenhouse gas emission mitigation and heritage conservation need to be mediated. And it's a fact that heritage conservation, there is a perceived opposition, a perceived dichotomy between the two things. So what we need is a wide perspective on the intersection between core competencies and considerations of cultural heritage conservation and greenhouse gas mitigation goals. And this includes living sustainably, carbon mitigations through the impact of the built through the demand side measures related to the built environment, considering that wider carbon life cycle impacts must also be addressed, not only the operational carbon emission, but also the embodied as well as the embedded energy. Loss and damage, there is another session. It's works on the scope of the topic of loss and damage used in this division to align with the strategic work stream or Warsaw International Mechanism. Impacts include the slow onset of events. This is more a session that highlights the impacts on cultural heritage. So highlights how the slow onset events like desertification, glacial retreat, land and forest degradation, increasing temperature and sea level rise impacts on climate change, on cultural heritage, and highlights the non-economic losses like migration, displacement, and human mobility. And then in the end of the report, there is a framework of systematically cataloging the impacts of climate change drivers on 6 cultural heritage typology. So that's kind of a brief explanation of this. And this study was actually probably the first one that highlighted the connection and the proactive approach to this project, to this work. Another slide came after. I'm gonna go a little bit faster on this because then otherwise it's slightly after, and it's it's a policy guidance for heritage and development actors. Basically, this is a report that highlights the connections between climate change, between sustainable development goals and cultural heritage through the analysis of the different points, different goals and their targets, as well as providing case studies to show how it's possible to address and to achieve sustainable development goals using heritage in a leveraging way. Then in that time, I mean, 2-3 years ago, was a lot of effort was placed with the climate heritage networking and also in fostering global partnership. And actually, in 2021, there was the first internet co-sponsored meeting on cultural heritage and climate change, co-sponsored by UNESCO, ICOMOS, and IPPC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. This was a milestone in the effort of integrating cultural heritage into climate action. Actually, this was the first time in history that scientists and experts working on cultural heritage and climate change science were brought together and in one forum. There are reports published on the website of the co-sponsored meeting that highlights this effort and the work that has been done. And our president, the ISCES president, Franziska Haas, was part of this, one of the report work within this major effort as well. Then of course the work has been done into to get to have a voice within the COP 26, 27, and 28 in order to promote within the UN conferences in order to promote this role and this and highlighting the importance of not only cultural heritage as a victim of climate change, but also as a tool for addressing it. So one of the it seems weird, but why we are throwing away buildings in a climate emergency with all the embodied energy that the buildings have and with all the sustainable way of living that historical city or the cultural heritage in our cities contribute to cultural identity and to sustainability of living. So those are the stress here is of course focused on buildings, on actually more the technical part, but there is also all a sustainable dimension of our historical urban landscape that needs to be understood. And there are other places in which is being investigated. I want to talk now, getting to buildings, I want to talk about the ICOMOS Scientific Committee on Energy and Sustainability and the work that we are doing. I mean, we are a group of volunteering, so of course it's not, it's very, and the topic is very, very challenging and pressuring. So we would like to do more, but in our intention, we would like to do more, but sometimes you have to balance life and this. But so the ISCES, ICOMOS Scientific Committee, ICOMOS International Scientific Committee on Energy Sustainability is one of the technical bodies of ICOMOS, and it researches and promotes understanding. Sorry, I have to move this. Okay, here we are. Understanding, protection, conservation, and management of built cultural heritage through considerations of the requirements of energy sustainability and climate change. It also provides a platform for exchange of ideas and dissemination of information. We currently have more than 70 members worldwide and contribute to a number of international initiatives like the Climate Heritage Network and ICOMOS Sustainable Development Goals group, working group as well. Our aim is to manage the change within the cultural environment and heritage places through the evidence-based application of energy conservation and sustainable development principles, while respecting the cultural significance of heritage values. Our objective include promoting awareness on the conservation of heritage places as part of the conservation of the world's scarce resources and of the energy conservation and sustainability inherent in heritage places. Serve as a body of international experts in the application of energy conservation and sustainability principles in conservation of places. Encourage research and facilitate communication and exchange of information on energy efficiency, climate change, and other sustainability matters. Collate, disseminate, and promote research. Provide a forum for discussion and for the exchange of information, regionally and international, on matters of principle and technical, legal, and administrative practice, affecting the application of energy conservation and sustainability principles to heritage places. Provide evidence-based information and guidance for authorities, industry, public and professional organizations, and develop industry and academic partnership to influence private and public policies issues of energy, sustainability, same topics. So that's quite ambitious, and we are trying to do our best. So far, sorry, why doesn't move? One moment, some things went wrong. Okay. So far, the new bureau, of which I'm part of, was elected in 2020. The committee was actually started in 2011, I think. I was, by Peter Cox, who was the president for a few years until the new election. We were elected, and Franziska Haas became the president. So I've provided contribution in the context of climate change and heritage, including, we started with building our website to provide a kind of a platform on the web. That's one of the first things the first task that we had to do. And there is a section of case studies and best practice resources. Then we are organizing some symposia. So far, I think we did 2 to disseminate knowledge. They are open to all the members to bring their project, their case studies, and to discuss and to propose. And usually we put information from the symposium on our resource page. Promoting research and awareness on whole life cycle analysis of the built environment, including which include, of course, operational, but also embodied and embedded carbon. Review integrating heritage in the European directive and our renovation wave for Europe. Why this is okay, one moment. So we participated also at a number of reviews, sorry, at a number of reviews. And sorry, is everything okay with the sorry, is everything okay with the
You're back to slide 1, I think.
I don't know why. Okay, yes, okay, okay, perfect. Okay, now it's okay. I mean, I have some things is wrong on my okay, perfect. Some things went wrong on my screen, sorry. I must push the wrong button. So we have played a role in reviewing policies and directives in the European framework. Many of our members are from Europe, so there is a lot of more workforce there. That's also something. So we are trying to expand membership in America, in Asia, in other continents, so that we can have a role. We can play a role in different contexts. So our symposia, our symposia were roundtable, where the one we did in 2022 focused at the end of 2022 focused on sustainable methods managing rising temperature in historic buildings. There was the heat wave in 2022. I mean, all summers now are facing high and increasing temperature. So we brought the theme was that, and a few examples of sustainable way of cooling buildings were presented. Another topic was I guess I already said that. So I think I have to move to the next. Okay, yeah, sorry, I divided into slides, but I didn't cancel the first one. I have to adjust the presentation before giving to you. So the European work that we are doing within the basically trying to influence and provide input into policy and legislation. Quoting, for example, we have been quite successful so far, at least in having cultural heritage mentioned and integrated in some of the work that some of the climate action policy that are being done within European Union. For example, the renovation wave, in quoting the EU Commission communication on the renovation wave, it says that sets out a strategy to enhance, to embrace, accelerate, and drive the transformation of the European building stock in a way that is underpinned by the climate neutrality objective, apply circularity principles, contribute to sustainable development goals. And at the end of this, it continues to saying that Europe's competitiveness and Europe's competitiveness and protects the right of everyone to have affordable, livable, and accessible, healthy housing while safeguarding cultural heritage. I think this while safeguarding cultural heritage is the result of a lot of efforts of working group and input that were placed towards the this policy. Other work, so in the way of integrating cultural heritage into policy, there are also there are a few reports done by within the European Union realm. One of this is strengthening cultural heritage resilience for climate change, and it's something that weighs into the European Green Deal, basically, where the subtitle is also where the European Green Deal meets cultural heritage. And in this report, it's basically the same, the approach is again that beside that cultural heritage is not only a victim, but it can provide solutions to help Europe to become a green, climate neutral continent. A total of, and in this report actually, a total of 83 best practice samples collected from 26 countries demonstrate the potential of cultural heritage solutions in the context of climate change. It identifies also 10 key areas to action. I'm not going to be deep into that. Another important recent publication, is the outcome of the work that has been done in the for the co-sponsored meeting, the IPCC co-sponsored meeting, and that's a report available on the website of the meeting. I don't remember the name of the website, but it's in the notes. The role of cultural and natural heritage for climate action. This report also highlights the status quo of the conversation, and also identifies ways forward, identifies basically a number of talking points where to start to continue the conversation and to address research and a number of other initiatives in order to move forward with this shift in perspective and have a leveraging and leverage cultural heritage into climate action. This was a kind of an important milestone. In fact, it was this co-sponsored meeting happened in December 2021, and was the first time that, scientists and cultural heritage experts came together to discuss opportunities. The report is published again. Sorry, I'm a little bit trying to scroll down the notes here. The talking points includes learning from the talking points that are basically way and perspective and indication of conversation to take of themes to develop, let's say so, includes learning from indigenous and local knowledge system, transforming pedagogies, mobilizing the effective power of heritage, producing social and historical contextualized account of anthropogenic climate change. That's important. Foregrounding a climate justice perspective, heritage, and include looking at heritage as a resource for resilience and adaptation, decolonizing heritage and climate change research, working across different modality, and narrowing, of course, the gap between science and society. And last document that we are still working on, so we are still the feedback phase has just been closed, is the revision of the energy performance of building directive in the European Commission. I don't remember if it's already at the European Council or not, but again, the first energy performance of building directive didn't include heritage at all. This one we propose, as a ISCES, we proposed a review and a proposal on how and in which to integrate the importance of the contribution for heritage, cultural heritage, and specifically historic building. And I think that's the new revised version that should be approved. The thing is, one of the key points is why we need to introduce historic buildings into the conversation, because the key point is that if historic buildings are left outside, they're going to be decayed, they're going to be demolished, they're not going to be part of the conversation. And there are ways, it's not necessarily that we need necessarily to maintain or preserve everything on historic buildings. It's always about adaptation. It's always about managing changes. So and that's the perspective that needs to be understood by probably both heritage professional in general, architects, engineers, and other professionals, and the policy, and this part also needs to be integrated in the policy framework, because needs to be there is also need of financial incentives and a number of other tools in order to research, of course, in order to make it possible, make the use and the contribution of the historic building stock possible. So there needs must be a synergy between different between a number of forces, but and professionals. Gonna go ahead with working studies, with case studies, resources that are available on our website. I'm gonna be very short on this. I don't know what time is it, but I think I'm talking too much. Yes, probably. So one of the case study for cooling was the study of a courtyard house. So the traditional courtyard house of the Mediterranean basin is generally described as a complex regulating system that creates a microclimate in a passive way to provide acceptable thermal control in summer. I'm not going to go long on this, but this is one way, like, this is an example of how local tradition can contribute to climate action, understanding how the way they work, and implement and also disseminate this knowledge. I think, unfortunately, in the last 50th century or even more, most 100 years, we almost forgot traditional way of building. No, maybe not 100 years, but 70 years for sure. We are into 2023 now. Another case study is again in Morocco, and it's related to earthen architecture. So this confirms the thermal and energy advantage of earthen architecture in rural and extreme climatic areas. So the case study, the research was done in the cold zone of the middle, between the middle and high Atlas, and in the hot zone of Arcadia in the desert region. And both analysis confirmed the thermal regulation of this again local traditional and local way of building. So the case study encouraged the population, professional, and institution to unit of efforts to improve energy efficiency in earthen architecture. Another element that another way that ISCS contributes is also, and its members as well, in also through to provide input in policies. Ireland Climate Sector Adaptation Plan is an example of how the national adaptation framework includes a specific sector on built and archaeological heritage. I'm not going to go long on this. It's available on the website, and our former president, Peter Cox, I think, was a great, was the main author, and has worked for many, many years in getting heritage, cultural heritage into policies in Ireland. I think there are also publications. I just used the resource that we have on our website, but there are also studies of historic England. I think you should know very well that have been recently published on guidance on how to adapt historic buildings, how to read the inherently. Another case that is on our website, another case study is the importance of, and another element that we need to push to build on is the importance of providing database, of providing information, of disseminating case studies. In this case, the Hyper Atlas was a project developed by, with a merging of two research projects, European Inter-Alpine Space Atlas and the IEA, sorry, one moment. For some reason, I got, task 59 that was basically on heritage and climate. Yeah, sustainability, heritage and climate. And basically, this is a website that's, the project was coordinated by URAC, and our president was a researcher at URAC at the time. And the project was provides basically an overview, and it's a database quite interesting of case studies of best practice example. And this, I think, that's another important element, because with historic buildings, each building is different from one another. There is no way that we can have a standardized practice or a standardized approach and methodology, maybe the methodology, but definitely not the methods. So it's important to have a wide, a significant database, so that similar cases can be diffused, can be studied, and can contribute to promote this approach, rather than approach to adaptive reuse that often don't have, because that's another risk of adaptive reuse, that projects that often don't have, don't align with conservation principles and good conservation practice. So there are other projects include also district energy. That's another way that energy efficiency can be addressed in historical center. This is a project that was is a PhD thesis at the University of Coimbra in Portugal, and it works on the concept of how to work in a historical center, providing supporting district energy and achieving nearly zero energy buildings. I mean, with kind of a low cost, because the problem of many historical centers is that there are people who live there often don't have the financial capacity also to do big renovation on individual buildings, and also probably they're not necessary, because they will probably alter so much the structure of historic buildings. I think I need to go fast. So so basically this kind of a summary. So we have seen that notion of cultural heritage as a driver of sustainable development is increasingly considering by diverse audiences. And I think this is already a good point, a good step forward. Policy, legislation, and planning have started to integrate cultural heritage. Research guidance on good conservation and climate action practice has increased. Life cycle analysis, research, and implementation is also being recognized, and research is also being implemented. Collective effort are therefore anyway imperative, as more needs to be done to achieve the Paris Agreement climate change targets, while preserving our cultural heritage. Sorry. I mean, I've just highlighted a few areas where we definitely need to work on collectively, and with considering one of the key aim of conservation, which is about managing change within the historical environment, and not only preserving as what is there as it is without. So more research needs to be done. The historical landscape approach needs to be implemented in urban planning. Energy efficiency conservation practice needs to be promoted. Policy, the importance also is to integrate cultural heritage specifically in policy and legislation, as we have seen, but also in energy and green rating systems. Most of the rating systems don't consider heritage, so you can also they have values that are not always real, not always the actual values. Again, there is probably more methodology to be implemented, methods to identify the individual value, value of buildings, because again, the historic buildings are unique. Technical regulatory framework like building codes or fire codes also needs to consider. Another important area in which this connection and this interconnection needs to be implemented is the educational programs, both educational programs that are on climate change and sustainability needs to integrate cultural heritage and vice versa. And fostering partnership opportunity, that's definitely something that needs to be done at many levels, not only global is started to do, but also national and local, to also foster financial incentives, investment for research and project and initiative. And I think I've done. Thank you for listening. I don't know if it's too late. Anyway, I was too long.
Thank you, Rosa.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Just to check with the organizers, is it how much time have we got? Given the fact we had some technical sort of delays at the beginning and.
Yeah, we are over by about 3 minutes, but I know we started a little bit late, so if you both have time, I think some of our participants have already had to leave, but we can definitely take, I see a couple of questions in the Q&A. If you both have time, we can definitely continue and at least try to answer these 2 questions before we end.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I just because as chair, there was a sort of part of this is to do a little sort of follow up on the talk. And one thing that might be sort of quite interesting to start off a little conversation around is also because I think what you sort of essentially illustrated in your talk is that the approach taken in the work that you've been involved with through ICOMOS, etc., focus very much on the high level impact is to be achieved through work on high-level policy changes. So working at the UN, so working at the European Union level in particular, there seems to be a very strong relationship that you've got, working in the European Union, but then also individual member states of the European Union.
Yeah.
So, and facilitating change at the policy level is interesting that the European Union is, of course, is a very large, geographically speaking, and population-wise, quite a large organization that has a global influence beyond its member states. And one thing that I would sort of like to ask you as a question is, how far do you think, despite the fact that the ICOMOS is slightly leaning towards slightly Eurocentric at the moment, focus because of the membership of the people who support the group that you're working in, but also having established this very strong link with the European Union. How far do you think the fact that you work in the European Union and they're developing a sort of model, does this go beyond Europe and therefore you have a much more low global reach because they're demonstrating a new way of doing things? Have you be able to say anything about that?
I think there are, we are expanding I'm talking about specific for ISCES. We kind of focus more, maybe we should start actually continue, because we did some initiative more on the sustainable way rather than on the technical only. But I think many of the members and the committee was founded and was very much focused on Europe. Now we are expanding, but again, the majority of the building stock and the historic building stock is definitely in Europe. I live in Canada, and I see that people don't even think that it's very, you have to get, there are other pressuring themes that are maybe more, and there is also a different approach towards authenticity and towards the actual materiality of buildings. And that's in North, specifically in North America, I would say there is a different approach toward demolition. It's more often implemented. So definitely there is a lot to do in the climate network. Climate heritage network. There are. It's more international. There is a lot of participation from South America, because and also from North America. There are some studies that have been done led by Canadians as well. So I think ICOMOS in particular, because of the majority of the member and the presidents was more, and many initiatives are happening at the European level, kind of try to address those. And in fact, yeah, we need to promote awareness outside of this in kind of the same approach, which is not always easy. In places where the historical building stock is not so, people don't feel, people in as related to buildings, there is a different approach toward change, let's say so. So I come from Italy, so I'm used to live in 15th century buildings and with adapted, and I think this is common in most of Europe. In North America, there is an approach, there is a tendency towards new. That's also different, a different mindset, let's say so. So it's probably more difficult to get this research and promote this. Whereas on the sustainable aspect, there is a lot of work done, and with the cultural heritage pertaining to indigenous people, and to the intangible the intangible dimension of cultural heritage as well. So a lot of work on the cultural landscapes, on other let's say typology of cultural heritage. In this presentation, I focused more on the role of on built heritage because of the focus on the international, on the ICOMOS. So I wanted to work on that work that I'm doing. But I don't know if I answered the question. I think
that's very
South America is also an example. I think the city of Quito, the historical center of Quito, the World Heritage Site, has done a great, is doing for decades a great work on leveraging on the World Heritage status to promote sustainability, to promote, and it's quite successful. Angelica Arias is the director of the Metropolitan Institute of Quito. She is very much engaged. She's also engaged in the climate network, climate heritage network, in the steering committee. Actually, she is now. So there is work all around, but specifically to buildings and to policy, I think most is being done. Europe is quite ahead. So I hope there are engagements here as well. There are a few some legislation that is proposed here that pose quite a challenge of on the historic buildings, and it's we have to start more from behind. We are a little bit behind, I think, in North America on addressing on the buildings. In the same.
So we got two other questions actually, Rosa, from people on the chat. So there's one of them, this is from Paramotiva, and writes, even though many of buildings are aging and they may be located in or near to historic site, they are not considered as built heritage. What is the ICOMOS Energy Committee's plan for energy efficiency management of such building in a historic context?
I will say that ISCAS, like all ICOMOS, I mean, we are not talking only about protected heritage. We are not talking only about World Heritage sites. So our efforts and our work is toward existing buildings. So if they are historic, they are existing buildings, they should be studied, I think, and that's so the work is open. Most of the buildings that are in the database that I showed you are not protected, and they still are valuable to the owners. So as long as someone recognizes the importance and the value and the cultural value of the building and wants to proceed in a certain way, not all buildings are protected. I mean, that's everywhere. So the definition, there is also some work done, and more needs to be done on the how to define the architectural merit. You know, the merit rather than if the building is not listed. There are some proposals, there is conversations, and it's all about exploring what are the parameters, and if there are needs, it's more. I think personally, I don't want to talk for ISCAS or for other or on behalf of ICOMOS or ISCAS, and just talk for myself. I think it's all about people recognize, people feel that connection to the place and wants to maintain that place, that it's valuable to them and it's cultural heritage to them. So I think that's another. It's an important topic, and a lot of work needs to be done also in that direction.
The interesting thing with that is that actually one could almost say that even buildings that are built now are sort of fall into the category that this agenda of saving buildings, this climate action, starts with any building that opens now. And there's buildings in the 90s, towers in Canary Wharf in London, for instance,
yes,
that were facing demolition, and the owners of those properties were reconsidering whether demolition or adaptive retrofit would be a better solution. So it's almost that agenda of conservation, preservation needs to be a culture that embraces all architectural forms, whether new or old.
I think so, because I mean, in the end, the embodied energy that makes the equation within, for the carbon emission is also in buildings built now. So it's so I think you're right. I think that's kind of a perspective. Of course, there are cultural values associated to buildings, so to places, let's say, of cultural significance that embrace that connection. But but the technical aspect of carbon efficiency can be extended to all buildings. Definitely. And then if there is that attachment to between a place and people, then that place becomes of cultural significance to them, regardless if it has built 20 years ago or 120 or 500 years ago.
Okay,
So,
there's one more question, but I think
I
you
agree
sort
with
of,
you.
yeah, there's one more question in the chat, but I think you've answered it though. So I don't quite understand it, but this Ali Bali's question, which division in ICOMOS is specifically working on impacts of climate change on built heritage?
I think there is a risk. I don't remember the name exactly because, but there is the Blue Shield, yes, but there is another. There are. We as a committee, we talk also on that, and we develop that. But I think I don't think there is. We as a committee are working on climate change, both in terms of impact and in terms of how to leverage on that. That's for sure. So we are the official organization, technical organization within ICOMOS, working on that. The perspective is being proactive. So in the sense that even the analysis and the studies on the impacts that climate change is having on buildings, so it's having on places of historical significance, is definitely there and it's being analyzed. But I think there is the important message here is stop, and we have stopped probably a few years ago to be only the victim. You kind of want to also push in the other direction, because you know, that's that we achieve, according to the Paris Agreement, we should achieve at least 1.5 degree in increasing temperature by 2023. I mean, that's not going to be achievable without using the existing building stock. And probably, I don't know, probably it's not going to be achievable, but at least we try to do our effort to get there or as close as possible. So I think, because of all the renovation and all the legislation that it's the role of the policy and legislation play in the renewal of in renewal waves or in energy retrofitting. Also the role of the building codes and the regulation play. It's important to demonstrate how reusing this can contribute to that. Yes, we know recognizing and acknowledging the impact, but also that can be used towards learning and learning ways of doing better, of how or learning from that how to be more proactive in adaptation measures, for example, or in mitigation measures. So I think we must always be proactive. I mean, that's a point.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think we have come to the end of our session, I think.
I think we're quite late.
And so thank you for sharing, you know, the work that you're doing and the work that the organizations are doing you're working with. I mean, in particular, what I think what comes across very, I think, interestingly is that you work sort of on a very high level policy level on one side, but on the other hand, you're also going into the intimate detail of traditional architecture and the way it can adapt to climate change, how we can learn from past traditional principles of architectural design in terms of climate adaptation, etc.
Yeah.
So I think you managed to essentially manage to navigate the sort of different scales and different dimensions of this problem.
Because
So
I
that's,
think
so thank you for that. And
because one dimension impacts the other. There is
yeah.
no legislation without without real case studies to push and leverage the legislation towards a good legislation, you know, to be an example. And there is no actually, it's difficult to implement good conservation practice when regulation or a rating system require different things, require different values, and which are easier to achieve by demolishing. And I mean, this probably it's mostly true in outside of Europe. We have I moved to Canada 10 years ago. I lived in England before, in London, and I lived in Italy. So we never think about demolition. I never thought about demolition when I had a project. The first thing is working within the project, working and see how we do. Now there is the additional dimension of climate action, so we need to introduce we need energy efficiency measure, but we always, where our perspective has always been, okay, do a refurbishment. Whereas when I moved to North America, I'm learning that the first thing that they think is demolish the building and then do it new, because it's more cost effectively. Or and there is a perceived understanding that new is better. And also there is another perceived understanding generally that there is little heritage because there is no centuries of history. So the recognition of heritage is kind of weird, but it's more, sometimes I recognize, I work with students, I teach at the university, I'm an assistant, not an assistant, I'm an adjunct professor at Dalhousie. And sometimes I do project with a student, kind of, they are a little bit outside the box in the sense that I'm not working on the existing historic designated building, but in areas of the city or in areas of the province, kind of even urban landscape, understanding. And the first thing that I see, okay, why there is any cultural significance, why and what it is, on places that most of the times are not designated. And it's actually interesting how, exploring that, they come to a conclusion that there is heritage, there is cultural significance, but at the first instance, they don't really understand, they don't really recognize it. So it's a different approach. That's also important to say.
Thank you, Rosa. I think we need to finish now because we are well over time now. And thank you for sharing. Yeah. And one could have a wonderful debate around this. You know, there's so many interesting things. So thank you for sharing. And Kurosh and then Francesca, do you want to say anything to finish the session? Yeah. Or?
Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to start off by thanking you very much, Rosa, for that great presentation. And thank you, Henrik, for moderating the session. And thank you, of course, to everyone who attended. We appreciate you taking the time to be here and joining us for this series. Just very quickly, I would like to remind everyone that this is a bi-weekly series. So we do have another session coming up on December 4th. At the same time, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. The speaker for that session will be Dr. Mario Santana Quintero, who is a professor of architectural conservation and sustainability at Carleton University. So please keep an eye on your inboxes for that reminder that will be coming out next week. And of course, feel free to share the information of this series with anybody in your networks that might be interested, as registrations are still open and it will be open until the last session. So just with that, I'd like to end with one last big thank you to everyone who attended, to you, Rosa, and to you, Henrik, for being here, presenting and moderating.
Thank you for this opportunity. And if there are any further questions or interest in knowing more, or just feel free to collect questions and then forward to me. We can respond. And anyway, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rosa.
Yeah.
Thank you, Henry. That was a informative session. Thank you so much.